First contact with the silent giant, Captain Maya Chen pressed her palm against the cold viewport of the salvaged ship Wanderer, watching the strange object that hung motionless in the void. 3 days they had been studying it, and still the massive crystalline structure defied explanation. It wasn't like any ship design in the Galactic databases, yet it clearly wasn't natural. Any luck with the scan, Zeph? Maya asked, turning toward her Altarian engineer. Zeph's tall blue-skinned frame was hunched over a console, his four arms working multiple interfaces simultaneously. Nothing new, Captain, Zeph replied, his melodic voice carrying a note of frustration. The hull appears to be made of some kind of biocrystalline composite. Energy readings are minimal, but there's definitely something active inside. It's like the ship is sleeping. From the navigation station, Crix clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. The insectoid Vex had compound eyes that could see across multiple spectrums, making her invaluable for deep space exploration. Captain Chen, the geometric patterns on the hull surface are not random. They follow mathematical sequences that suggest intelligent design, possibly even a form of writing. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her xenobiology station, pushing a strand of dark hair. Behind her ear, I've been monitoring the ship's electromagnetic emissions. There's a pattern there too, almost like a heartbeat. Whatever's inside, it's definitely alive in some sense. Jake Morrison, the ship's human systems specialist, had been unusually quiet during their 3-day vigil. He stood near the back of the bridge, staring at the alien vessel with an expression Maya couldn't quite read. There was something almost hungry in his gaze, as if their ship was calling to him. Jake, you've been awfully quiet. Any thoughts on our mystery ship? Maya asked Jake. Blinked and seemed to snap out of his trance. Sorry, Captain. It's just thought. I keep feeling like I've seen it before. Not exactly like this, but similar. The patterns, the way it's shaped, it reminds me of something from a dream. Maya frowned. Jake was usually the most practical member. Her crew, not given to flights of fancy. Dreams? I know how it sounds, Jake said, running a hand through his sandy hair. But ever since we found this thing, I've been having the strangest dreams. Cities of crystal and light. People who look human but aren't quite right. And always ships like this one. Before Maya could respond, their communications officer announced an incoming transmission. Captain, we're receiving a hail from the Galactic Council survey ship Harmony. They're requesting permission to approach, Maya sighed. Word had gotten out about their discovery, despite their attempts at secrecy. The Galactic Council was the loose federation that governed most known civilizations and may have a habit of claiming anything interesting for the greater good of all species. Put them through, Maya said. The main view screen shimmered to life, revealing the stern face of Commander Voss, a member of the rigid militaristic Chromax species. His gray-scaled features showed no emotion as he spoke. Captain Chun, the Council, has been informed of your discovery. We are dispatching a full science team to take custody of the alien vessel. You will transfer all your research data and withdraw to a safe distance. Maya felt her jaw clench. Commander, with respect, this is free space. We found the ship and we have salvage rights. Not when the discovery potentially affects galactic security, Voss replied coldly. Our xenarchaeologists have determined that this vessel may be of precursor origin. Such artifacts belong to all species, not to individual salvage crews. The transmission cut off, and Maya cursed under her breath. The precursors were a legendary race that supposedly existed millions of years ago, before any of the current galactic civilizations had developed space travel. Most scientists believed they were nothing more than myth, but the Council used precursor artifacts as an excuse to confiscate anything they couldn't identify. How long until they arrive? Maya asked. Air. Ship is 6 hours out, Crix replied. But, Captain, I am detecting multiple other vessels approaching from different vectors. It appears word of our discovery has spread. Maya's heart sank. Soon, their quiet little mystery would become a 3-ring circus of competing alien factions, all claiming the right to study this strange ship. She made a decision that would change everything. "Prep the shuttle," she ordered. "If we're going to lose access to that ship, I want to at least get a first-hand look at it before the politicians arrive." An hour later, Maya, Jake, and Dr. Kim were aboard their small shuttle, approaching the crystalline vessel. Up close, it was even more magnificent than the scans had suggested. The ship was enormous, easily 3 kilometers long, and its surface seemed to shift and flow like living crystal. The patterns Crix had noticed were clearly visible now, swirling geometric designs that seemed to move when viewed directly. "I'm not detecting any docking bays or obvious entry points," Sarah reported from the shuttle's sensors. "The hull appears to be seamless." "Wait," Jake said, suddenly, leaning forward in his seat. "Try the ventral section, about halfway back." "There's something there." Maya looked at him questioningly. "How do you know that?" Jake paused, looking confused. I'm not sure. It just feels right." Despite her skepticism, Maya adjusted their course. As they approached the section Jake had indicated, something remarkable happened. A section of the crystal hull began to glow with soft amber light, and slowly an opening iris had opened, perfectly sized for their shuttle. "Impossible," Sarah breathed. There was no indication of any mechanisms in that area. They docked with practiced efficiency, though Maya's heart was pounding. The docking tube sealed against the alien hull with a soft hiss, and the 3 humans found themselves standing before a shimmering, translucent barrier that separated them from the ship's interior. Jake stepped forward first, and the moment his gloved hand touched the barrier, it dissolved like morning mist. Beyond lay a corridor that seemed to be carved from solid diamond, walls reflecting their lights in thousands of dancing rainbows. "The atmosphere is breathable," Sarah reported, checking her scanner. "Oxygen, nitrogen, even the pressure is identical. To Earth normal. How is that possible?" They removed their helmets and stepped inside. The corridor was warm, and the air carried a faint scent of ozone and something floral that Maya couldn't identify. As they moved deeper into the ship, lights began to activate ahead of them, as if the vessel was welcoming them home. "Captain," Jake said, his voice oddly distant, "I think we need to get to the center of the ship. There's something there that's been waiting for us." Maya was about to ask how he could possibly know that when the walls around them suddenly came alive with images, not projected images, but somehow embedded in the crystal itself. They showed scenes of incredible beauty and terrible sadness, vast cities that seemed to grow rather than be built, people who looked remarkably human despite obvious genetic modifications, and always ships like the one they were exploring. The images shifted and changed, telling a story without words. Maya watched in fascination as the scene showed these human-like beings spreading across the galaxy, building wonders beyond imagination. But then came darkness, destruction, a terrible war that consumed entire star systems. The surviving ships fled into the void, their crews entering some form of suspended animation. "My God," Sarah whispered. "These aren't aliens at all. They're human, our ancestors." Jake had stopped walking and was staring at one particular image that showed a man who looked remarkably like him, standing before a ship identical to the one they were exploring. As he watched, the man in the image turned and seemed to look directly at Jake, their eyes meeting across impossible ages. "We need to keep moving," Jake said, his voice now carrying a strange authority. "The council ships will be here soon, and there's something this ship needs to tell us before they arrive." They followed a spiraling corridor that led ever inward, and Maya found herself thinking about Earth's prehistory. Humanity had always wondered about the gap in their evolutionary record, the sudden leap from primitive ancestors to modern humans. What if that leap hadn't been natural evolution, but genetic engineering by an earlier human civilization? The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Maya's breath away. The ceiling soared hundreds of meters overhead, and the walls were covered in flowing script that seemed to write itself as they watched. At the center of the chamber stood a pillar of pure light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Jake walked toward the pillar without hesitation, and Maya noticed that his movements had changed. He carried himself differently now, with a confidence and purpose that seemed almost regal. When he placed his hand on the pillar, the entire chamber filled with a voice that spoke directly into their minds. "Welcome home, children of the first wandering," the voice said, warm and ancient and unutterably sad. "I am Echo, the memory keeper of the ship Remembrance. I have waited 50,000 years for your return." Maya felt tears streaming down her face without knowing why. The voice continued, and with each word she felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place in her mind. "Your ancestors were the first to walk among the stars, the first to touch distant worlds and call them home. You were explorers, builders, dreamers who sought to uplift all life wherever you found it. But your very success became your downfall." Images flowed around them now, showing the rise and fall of humanity's first galactic civilization. They had been everything the voice claimed: explorers, teachers, builders of wonders. But other species, fearful of human ambition and adaptability, had united against them in a war that lasted centuries. In the end, Echo continued, your ancestors made the hardest choice. Rather than fight a war that would destroy the galaxy, they erased themselves. They scattered their children across distant worlds, sealed their memories, and went into the long sleep. But they left watchers, ships like myself, waiting for the day when humanity would grow strong enough to reclaim its heritage. Jake's hand was glowing where it touched the pillar, and Maya could see something changing in his eyes. Knowledge was flowing into him, genetic memories unlocking after millennia of dormancy. The other species believed they discovered space travel independently, Eco said. They do not know that your ancestors taught their ancestors the secrets of the stars. They do not know that every major advance in galactic civilization can be traced back to human innovation. They have built their current society on the foundation your people provided, but they have forgotten the builders. Sarah stepped forward, her scientific mind struggling to process what they were learning. But why reveal this now? Why wake up after all this time? Because the galaxy faces a new threat, Eiko replied. The same force that drove your ancestors into hiding has returned. The Devourers have awakened from their own long sleep, and they hunger for the destruction of all intelligent life. Only humanity, with its unique adaptability and refusal to accept defeat, has any hope of stopping them. The chamber suddenly filled with an urgent chime, and Maya's communicator crackled to life. Captain, this is Zeph. The Council fleet has arrived early, and they're demanding immediate access to the alien ship. They're powering weapons and threatening to board us if we don't withdraw. Maya looked at Jake, who was still connected to the pillar, his face serene despite the chaos erupting around them. Jake, we need to go. But Jake shook his head. No, Captain. We need to stay. Echo is about to show us something that will change everything. The pillar flared brighter, and suddenly Maya could feel the presence of the Council ships outside. Their alien crews frustrated and growing angry at their inability to access the vessel. She could sense their confusion as their own attempts to interface with the ship met with complete failure. The ship will only respond to true humans, Eco explained. Your DN carries the key, the genetic signature of the first wanderers. To others, this vessel is nothing more than dead crystal. But to you, it is home? As if summoned by Eiko's words, more lights began activating throughout the chamber. Consoles rose from the floor, their surfaces covered with symbols that somehow made perfect sense to Maya, though she had never seen them before. Jake's connection to the pillar was growing stronger, and she could see knowledge flowing between him and the ancient AI. Captain Chun, Echo said, its voice now addressing her directly. You must make a choice. Your people can continue to hide among the other species, pretending to be nothing more than another young civilization stumbling toward the stars. Or you can reclaim your birthright and prepare for the war that is coming. But know this, once you choose to remember, There will be no going back. The other species will fear you, as they feared your ancestors. Maya felt the weight of decision. Pressing down on her, outside she could hear the cum chatter as more alien ships arrived, all of them demanding access to the human vessel. Inside, she stood in a chamber that held the secrets of humanity's true past and possibly its future. What exactly are you asking us to do? She asked. I am asking you to wake up, Echo replied. I am asking you to remember who you truly are. The chamber around them pulsed with ancient power, waiting for her answer. Maya looked at Jake, who was now glowing with the same light as the pillar, and at Sarah, whose scientific instruments were going wild as they tried to catalog the impossible energies surrounding them. The choice would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. The question was, were they ready for their consequences? As alarms began blaring from their shuttle, indicating that the alien ships were preparing to take more aggressive action, Maya realized they were about to find out. Asterisk unlocking ancient memories. Maya's decision came faster than she expected. Do it, she said to Echo, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting outside. Show us who we really are. The moment the words left her lips, the chamber exploded with light. Jake's connection to the pillar intensified, and Maya felt something fundamental shift inside her mind. It was like a door opening in a room she never knew existed, flooding her consciousness with memories that weren't her own, but somehow belonged to her. She saw herself standing on the bridge of a ship that dwarfed anything in the current galactic fleet. Around her, humans worked with technology that seemed to respond to thought itself. But these weren't quite the humans she knew. They were taller, more graceful, their eyes holding depths of knowledge accumulated over millennia. Their leader, a woman who looked remarkably like Maya herself, commanded respect from beings across a dozen different species. We called ourselves the First Wanderers. Echo's voice resonated through both the chamber and Maya's expanding consciousness. Your ancestors were the first to master the space between spaces, to bend the fabric of reality itself. They didn't just travel to the stars, they taught the stars to sing. Sarah gasped beside her, her own eyes now glowing with the same amber light that suffused the chamber. I can see it, she whispered. The genetic engineering, the way they modified themselves for different worlds. They didn't just adapt to space, they adapted space to themselves. More memories flooded in, and Maya watched in awe as the story of humanity's first galactic empire unfolded. They had been explorers first, discoverers of worlds beyond counting. But unlike conquerors, they had been teachers. Every species they encountered was uplifted, given the tools to reach for their own stars. The Altarians, with their natural musical harmony, had been taught to navigate by stellar resonance. The insectoid Vex had learned to see across dimensions, their compound eyes modified to perceive quantum probabilities. Even the rigid Chromach had once been creative builders, their military discipline originally channeled into constructing impossible architectures that spanned star systems. But the gift of knowledge came with a price, Eco continued, and the memories turned darker. Other species began to fear human potential. They whispered that humans changed too quickly, adapted too easily. They said that humans would eventually outgrow the need for other species entirely. Jake's voice cut through the visions, though he hadn't moved from the pillar. They were wrong, he said, his words carrying the weight of ancient authority. We never wanted to rule. We only wanted to explore, to learn, to grow alongside our friends among the stars. But fear, Echo said sadly, is a more powerful force than friendship. The chamber around them shifted, and suddenly they were witnessing the beginning of the great betrayal. Species that humanity had nurtured for thousands of years turned against their teachers. The war that followed wasn't like anything in recorded galactic history. It was fought with weapons that could reshape reality, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and soldiers who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Mia watched in horror as beautiful worlds were turned to glass as entire star systems were deleted from existence. The humans fought not to win, but to minimize the damage to their former friends. Even as they were betrayed, they couldn't bring themselves to use their full power against species they had helped create. In the end, Echo whispered, "Your ancestors faced an impossible choice. They could destroy their enemies and rule over the ashes of the galaxy, or they could save the galaxy by destroying themselves. The final memory was the most painful." Mia watched as the last great council of humanity made their decision. They would scatter their genetic legacy across distant worlds, hiding it in primitive populations that would slowly evolve back toward their potential. The great ships would go into hiding. Their A is waiting in the void for the day when humanity might be strong enough to reclaim its heritage without repeating the mistakes of the past. They erased themselves from galactic memory, Eco said. They altered the historical records, destroyed the monuments, even modified the genetic memories of other species to forget who had truly taught them to reach the stars. They became myths, legends, eventually nothing more than whispered stories of the precursors. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she watched her ancestors make the ultimate sacrifice. They had given up everything, their empire, their technology, their very identity to preserve the galaxy they loved. "But they left us behind," Jake said, his voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. Ships, like this one, scattered throughout the galaxy, waiting for the day when humanity would grow strong enough to face the truth. The chamber suddenly shuddered, and Maya's communicator exploded with urgent voices. "Captain!" Jeff's voice was tight with panic. "The council ships are trying to force their way through the hull. Their cutting beams aren't working, but they're bringing up some kind of quantum disruptor." Echo's presence grew more urgent. They must not be allowed to damage the ship. The knowledge contained here is too precious to lose, and there are things aboard that would be catastrophic in the wrong hands. "What kind of things?" Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Weapons," Jake replied, his connection to the ship showing him systems that hadn't been active for 50 millennia. "Planet killers, star crushers, reality bombs. The kind of weapons that could end civilizations with a thought." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "And they all respond only to human genetic markers?" "Correct," Echo confirmed. "Your ancestors built safeguards into everything they created. Only true humans can access the deep systems, and only humans who have accepted their heritage can command the full power of the ships." Another shudder ran through the vessel, stronger this time. Mia could feel the alien weapons trying to penetrate. The crystalline hull, their energy signatures like fingernails on a chalkboard against her expanding senses. "Captain," came Crix's voice over the com, "I am detecting massive energy buildups from the Council fleet. I believe they are preparing to use their most powerful weapons." Maya looked at Jake, who was now so connected to the ship that she could barely see his human form beneath the flowing energies that surrounded him. "Can you stop them?" Jake's eyes, now glowing with the same amber light as the ship's core, met hers. "I can do more than stop them. I can show them the truth." "What do you mean?" "Every species in that fleet carries genetic modifications made by our ancestors. Hidden in their DNA are the keys to memories they've forgotten. If I activate the ship's deep transmitters, I can unlock those memories. They'll remember who we really are." Sarah stepped forward, her scientific mind racing. "That could be incredibly dangerous. If you force them to remember everything at once, the psychological shock could kill them. Or it could save them," Jake replied. "Because Eco is right about one thing, we're not the only ones who are waking up." The ship's main display activated, showing a star map that stretched across the entire galaxy. Points of light were scattered throughout, some pulsing steadily, others dark and silent. "The other First Wanderer ships," Maya breathed. 47. "Vessels are responding to the awakening signal," Echo confirmed. "But so are other things. Things that should have remained sleeping." The star map shifted, zooming in on the far edge of the galaxy. There, in the dark space between spiral arms, something vast and terrible was stirring. It wasn't one ship, but thousands, maybe millions, moving in perfect formation toward the inhabited sectors. The Devourer's echo said, its voice heavy with ancient dread, the enemy that drove your ancestors to hide in the first place. They hibernate for millions of years, then wake to consume every trace of intelligent life they can find. The activation of the Wanderer ships has drawn their attention. Mia felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. How long do we have? Based on their current trajectory and acceleration patterns, perhaps 6 months before they reach the outer colonies. A year before they arrive at the core worlds, the ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through their connection to the vessel, Maya could sense the Council fleet's growing desperation. They were preparing to use weapons that could crack planets, all to access a ship they couldn't possibly understand. They'll destroy us and themselves, Sarah said. They don't realize what they're dealing with. Jake's form was becoming more translucent as his connection to the ship deepened. I can save them, he said. I can wake up their genetic memories gently, show them the truth gradually. But I need time, and I need them to stop attacking. Maya made another decision that would echo through history. Echo, can you communicate with our ship? Of course. Tell Zev to broadcast this message on all Council frequencies. Humanity claims this vessel by right of blood and memory. We invoke the ancient laws of salvage and genetic inheritance. Stand down, and we will share what we have learned. And if they refuse? Echo asked. Maya looked at the star map, at the vast enemy fleet crawling toward their galaxy like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Then we show them what human desperation can accomplish. The ship's communication array, silent for 50,000 years, roared to life. Maya's message went out on frequencies that every ship in the fleet could receive, but encoded with harmonics that resonated directly with the genetic memories hidden in each alien crew. The response was immediate and chaotic. Some ships began powering down their weapons, their crews suddenly experiencing flashes of memory that didn't make sense. Others became more aggressive, their commanders fighting against the strange sensations flooding their minds. But one ship, the Altarian vessel Song of Stars, responded differently. Its captain, a being named Thane, whose family had served as stellar navigators for generations, opened a direct channel. Human vessel, Thane's melodic voice carried strange harmonics. I am experiencing remembrances that should not exist. I see your ancestors teaching mine to hear the music of the spheres. I see friendships that span millennia. How is this possible? Mia felt hope bloom in her chest. Because it's true, Captain Thane. Because your people and mine were once closer than family. More ships began responding as their crews struggled with awakening memories. The rigid Chromac found themselves remembering a time when their people built wonders instead of weapons. The logical Nixari recalled emotions they thought they had evolved beyond. Even the insectoid Vex began to remember individual names and faces. Instead of just hive statistics, but not all of the fleet was ready for the truth. Commander Voss's voice cut through the growing chorus of confused aliens. This is some kind of human trick, he snarled. Psychological warfare designed to confuse and weaken us. All ships maintain attack formation. He's not wrong, Jake said, his voice now seeming to come from the ship itself. This is psychological warfare, but it's warfare against ignorance. And fear, not against our friends. The ship's deeper systems were coming online now, and Maya could feel the awesome power that her ancestors had built into every component. This wasn't just a starship, it was a mobile civilization, capable of manufacturing entire fleets, terraforming worlds, even creating new forms of life. Maya, Jake said, and she turned to find that he was now completely merged with the pillar. Of light, his human form visible but translucent. I need you to take command of the ship. Echo will guide you. But the deep systems require a human consciousness to direct them. What about you? I'm going to do what our ancestors should have done 50,000 years ago. I'm going to tell our friends the truth, all of it, and trust them to help us face what's coming. Before Mia could protest, Jake's consciousness expanded beyond the ship. She felt him touch the minds of every being in the Council fleet, not forcing his way in, but offering memories like gifts. He showed them the golden age when humans and aliens built wonders together. He showed them the betrayal and the war that followed. He showed them the sacrifice humanity had made to preserve the galaxy. And finally, he showed them the DEOURERS. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Across the fleet, alien crews gasped as they saw the true enemy for the first time. The Devourers weren't just conquerors. They were the antithesis of life itself. Machines built to consume and convert all matter into more of themselves. Commander Voss was the last to succumb to the awakening memories. Maya watched through the ship's sensors as the rigid Chromac commander staggered on his bridge, his disciplined mind cracking under the weight of suppressed knowledge. "No," he whispered, then screamed, "No, this cannot be true." But even as he denied it, his genetic memory was showing him the truth. His ancestors had been artists, builders of living cities that spanned continents. They had been taught by humans to channel their natural discipline into creation rather than destruction. The military culture that now defined his species was a recent development born from the trauma of the Great Betrayal. One by one, the Council ships powered down their weapons. Their crews were too overwhelmed by returning memories to maintain aggression. They were remembering who they had been before fear changed them. "The first phase is complete," Eco announced. "The awakening has begun." Maya took her place at what she now understood was the ship's command throne, feeling the vast intelligence of the vessel merge with her consciousness. Through the ship's sensors, she could perceive every detail of the Council fleet, could sense the confused and frightened beings struggling to reconcile their recovered memories with their current reality. "Now comes the hard part," she said. "Convincing them to help us fight a war they've spent 50,000 years trying to forget." Sarah, who had been monitoring the biological effects of the memory awakening, looked up from her displays. "Maya, there's something else. The genetic modifications aren't just memories, they're instructions. I think our ancestors didn't just hide our history. They hid weapons in our DNA, waiting for the right trigger to activate them." Maya felt a new sensation flowing through her connection to the ship, not fear, but anticipation. Humanity's true heritage was awakening, and with it came power beyond anything the current galaxy had ever imagined. The question now was whether they could master that power before the Devourers arrived to test it. Asterisk. Humanity's true heritage, the War Council that assembled aboard the Remembrance 3 days later, would have been impossible to imagine just a week before. Captain Maya Chen sat at the head of a crystalline table that had grown from the ship's living hull, surrounded by beings who were struggling to reconcile 50,000 years of false history with their recovered memories. Captain Thane of the Altarians was the first to speak, his melodic voice carrying new harmonics that resonated with the ship's systems. "My people remember now. We remember the songs your ancestors taught us, the way they showed us how to hear. The music between the stars, but we also remember the fear that drove us to betray them." Commander Voss sat rigidly at the far end of the table, his scaled features showing the strain of his mental reconstruction. The proud Chromac warrior was having the hardest time accepting the truth. "Even if these memories are real," he said carefully, "even if our ancestors knew yours, that does not change our current situation. We are who we are now, not who we once were." Maya felt Jake's presence in her mind, his consciousness now permanently merged with the ship's systems. Through their connection, she could sense his frustration with the political maneuvering even as the galaxy faced extinction. "Show them," Jake whispered in her thoughts. "Show them what we're really facing." Maya stood, and the chamber around, then transformed. The walls became transparent, revealing not the interior of the ship, but a view of deep space that stretched across light years. In the distance, barely visible even to the ship's enhanced sensors, came the Devourer fleet. "This is what our long-range scanners are detecting," Maya said, her voice carrying new authority that came from her connection to the ancient vessel. "Approximately 12 million vessels, each one capable of stripping a planet bare in a matter of hours. They're not coming to conquer. They're coming to consume everything in their path." The assembled captains stared in horror at the approaching swarm. Dr. Sarah Kim, who had spent the last 3 days analyzing the Devourer signals, stepped forward. "We've managed to decode some of their transmissions," she said. "They're not alive in any sense we understand. They're self-replicating machines built by a civilization that existed before even the first wanderers. They consumed their creators billions of years ago and have been hibernating ever since, waiting for the galaxy to rebuild a mass to be worth harvesting. How do we fight something like that?" Ask Captain Zira of the Nexari, her logical mind struggling to process the impossibility of the situation. Maya looked around the table at faces that belonged to species her ancestors had once called friends. "The same way humanity has always fought impossible odds," she said. "We adapt. We innovate. And we refuse to give up." Echo's presence filled the chamber, its ancient voice carrying both sorrow and hope. The first wanderers foresaw this day. They knew the Devourers would eventually wake, and they prepared for it. Every ship they built, every genetic modification they made, every piece of technology they created was designed with this moment in mind. The ship's displays came alive, showing technical specifications that made the assembled aliens gasp. The Remembrance wasn't just a vessel, it was a mobile factory capable of producing weapons and ships that could challenge the Devourer fleet. But more importantly, it could activate dormant capabilities in other species, unlocking potential that had been sleeping for millennia. "The genetic modifications your ancestors received weren't just gifts," Maya explained. "They were insurance policies. Hidden in your DNA are the blueprints for technologies that your species have forgotten how to build. The humans didn't just teach you to reach the stars. They gave you the tools to defend them." Captain Thane's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "The resonance frequencies? The songs my people use for navigation, they're not just for finding our way. They're weapon targeting systems." "And the Vex compound eyes," added Captain Crix, who had been monitoring the discussion from her ship. "We see across multiple dimensions, but we've never understood why. It's because we were meant to spot weaknesses in reality itself." Even Commander Voss was beginning to understand. The Chromac discipline, our military structures, they weren't natural developments. They were preparations for a war we've forgotten how to fight, Maya nodded. "Every species in this galaxy carries the tools to fight the Devourers. You just need to remember how to use them." Over the next several hours, the ancient ship worked its transformative magic. The Altarians discovered that their musical abilities could disrupt the quantum harmonics that held Devourer ships together. The Vex learned to see the dimensional weak points that could be exploited to collapse entire enemy formations. The Chromac remembered how to build fortress ships that could serve as mobile bases for the growing resistance. But it was the humans who carried the greatest burden and the greatest potential. "Jake," Mia said, addressing the pillar of light that had once been her crewmate, "what exactly are we becoming?" Jake's response came not in words but in visions. Maya saw herself as she truly was, not just a human, but the inheritor of a legacy that spanned eons. The genetic modifications that ran through human DNA weren't just potential. They were instructions for evolution itself. "We were never meant to stay as we were," Jake explained. "The first wanderers built adaptation into our very cells. Every generation, we become more than the last. Stronger, faster, smarter, more intuitive. We're not just humans, we're the universe's answer to entropy itself." Sarah, who had been monitoring the biological changes in all the awakened species, looked up from her scanners with wonder and terror in her eyes. "The modifications are accelerating. Everyone who's been exposed to the ship's awakening field is evolving in real time. We're becoming what we were always meant to be." Maya could feel it happening to herself. Her connection to the ship was growing stronger by the hour, and with it came abilities that should have been impossible. She could sense the thoughts and feelings of every being on the vessel. She could perceive quantum fluctuations with her naked eyes. She could feel the approaching Devourer fleet like a cold wind across her soul. "How long do we have?" "Commander," Voss asked, his military mind cutting through the wonder to focus on practical concerns. Less than we hoped, Echo replied. The Devourers have detected the awakening energy signatures. They're accelerating their approach. We now have perhaps 2 months before they reach the outer colonies. Maya felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders, but also the strength to bear it. Then we need to move fast. Echo, how many other Wanderer ships are still functional? 47 are responding to signals, but only 12 are fully operational. The others have been damaged by time or discovered by primitive civilizations that couldn't understand what they'd found. Can we wake them all? With your permission, yes. But doing so will also fully alert the Devourers to our location. They will know that humanity has returned. Maya looked around the table at the assembled captains, seeing the fear and hope warring in their alien faces. These beings were remembering what it meant to be part of something greater than themselves, but they were also terrified of the war that was coming. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. The evolutionary changes aren't stopping. If we continue at this rate, within a few months we'll all be so far beyond our current forms that we might not be recognizable as the species we once were. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Ask Captain Thane. Perhaps becoming more than we are is the only way to survive what's coming. Maya closed her eyes and reached out through her connection to Jake and the ship, feeling the vast network of sleeping vessels scattered across the galaxy. Each one contained the preserved consciousness of first Wanderer crews waiting for the command to wake and join the fight. Do it, she said. Wake them all. Send the signal to every human colony, every sleeping ship, every hidden cache of ancient technology. It's time for humanity to come home. Jake's consciousness expanded beyond the ship, touching systems that had been dormant for millennia. Across the galaxy, ancient vessels stirred to life. On a dozen worlds, humans who had never suspected their true heritage suddenly found themselves remembering abilities they'd never learned. Hidden installations revealed themselves, offering weapons and knowledge to descendants who were finally ready to claim their inheritance. But the awakening came with a price. The moment the full network activated, space itself seemed to scream. In response, the Devourer fleets, sensing the threat that humanity represented, abandoned all pretense of stealth and began accelerating toward the galactic core at speeds that violated every known law of physics. They're coming, Echo announced unnecessarily. Every being on the ship could feel the approaching malevolence like a pressure wave in their souls. Maya stood, feeling power flow through her that she was only beginning to understand. Around a table, the other captains were undergoing their own transformations. They were becoming something new, something that could stand against the mechanical tide of extinction. Then we'll meet them, Maya said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions she hadn't known existed minutes before. We'll meet them with everything our ancestors built, everything they sacrificed to preserve, and everything we've become because of their gift. The ship around them began to change, its crystalline structure flowing like liquid as it reconfigured, itself for war. Weapons that had been hidden in its very atoms emerged. Systems that could manipulate reality itself came online. And the vessel transformed from an artifact of the past into an engine of the future. Through her expanded consciousness, Maya could sense the other awakening ships following suit. 47 ancient vessels were remembering how to be weapons of unimaginable power. More importantly, their crews, the preserved consciousness of the first Wanderers, were stirring from their long sleep, bringing with them the knowledge and experience of the last war against the Devourers. The children of Earth have returned, Maya said, her words carrying across space to every awakened ship, every transformed colony, every human who is discovering their true heritage. And this time, we won't hide. The assembled fleet began to move, not just the ancient ships, but the vessels of every species that had remembered their true origins. Altarian songships that could shatter matter with harmonized frequencies. Chromac fortress vessels that could serve as mobile command centers. Vex swarm craft that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. At the center of it all, the remembrance led the way toward humanity's destiny. Maya stood on its bridge, no longer quite human, but not yet something else entirely. Watching the stars wheel by as they raced toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of all. Life in the galaxy? Jake, she said to her transformed friend, are we going to win? His response came with the weight of 50,000 years of preparation and the accumulated wisdom of a species that had never learned how to surrender. We're human, he said. Simply, losing was never really an option. Behind them, the galaxy held its breath as two forces of incomprehensible power prepared to clash among the stars. The Devourers brought destruction and entropy, the promise of silence and the peace of the grave. Humanity brought something far more dangerous: hope, stubbornness, and the absolute refusal to go quietly into that good night. The war for the galaxy soul was about to begin, and this time humanity wasn't planning to hide when it was over. This time, they were coming home to stay,